live.
So good afternoon, everyone. And for those of you who are joining us online, welcome to the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation Quality and Tenant Engagement meeting. Today is Monday, January the 1st, 2026. Usually this meeting is chaired by Linda Jackson. Unfortunately, Linda is unable to be with us today. She is going through a bit of a challenge within her family. So I want Linda to know that she is in our thoughts and prayers. So I will be chairing the meeting on Linda's behalf. As many of you know, I am the chair of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, and I'm more than happy to pitch in for Linda. Many of you also know that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. So I'm hoping that those of you who have access to that channel can tune in and listen to the deliberations. I would also like to acknowledge that June is Senior Awareness Month. It is also Italian Heritage Month. It is National Indigenous History Month, Portuguese Heritage Month, Pride Month, and Filipino Heritage Month. And our CEO perhaps will speak to some of these issues more fulsome in his update. I just also want to say that the last couple of days marked the end of the Hajj or pilgrimage to Mecca for Muslims. So those who have been celebrating over the last several days, please accept our congratulations and Eid Mubarak. We have a full and exciting agenda today. We've got a couple of deputants and a couple of items, so we will defer to the deputations when we get to that part of the agenda. I will now proceed to our next agenda item, the Land and African Ancestral Acknowledgement. Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation recognizes that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat nations, and that this area is now home to a diverse population of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We recognize that Toronto is situated within the traditional territories governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, as well as Treaty 13 and the Williams treaties involving the Anishinaabe and the Crown. These agreements remain in effect today, underscoring our shared responsibility as treaty people. The Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation has benefited from these treaties and the resources of this land by providing essential housing services to seniors in Toronto. We are dedicated to furthering reconciliation initiatives, which include facilitating staff education on the historical and ongoing impacts of policies affecting Indigenous peoples. This encompasses topics such as the Indian Act, residential schools, treaty violations, and the continued crisis surrounding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Now for the African Ancestral Acknowledgement, Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation acknowledges the racism and injustices faced by individuals who were brought to this land involuntarily, particularly those affected by the transatlantic slave trade. We acknowledge the experiences of Black people who arrived in Canada seeking a better life following the abolition of slavery by the British in 1834, while also recognizing the structural, systemic, and individual racism that they encountered, which continues to persist today. This racism culminated in the tragic destruction of Africville, which was once the largest settlement of Black community in Canada. Toronto Seniors Housing is committed to recognizing all forms of racism, especially anti-Black racism, and is actively working to combat these injustices. We will now proceed to our next item on the agenda. The agenda was circulated. Are there any new business or any amendments to the agenda that committee would like to propose at this stage? Seeing none, I will proceed to interpret that the agenda is accepted as circulated. May I have someone move that the circulated agenda be adopted? Moved by Councillor Crisanti. Seconded by Just. All in favor? That is approved. We will now proceed to item number 4, which is conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest that anyone would like to declare at this stage? Hearing and seeing none, I assume that if something were to arise during our deliberation, that you will identify it, and we will deal with it at that particular time. So with that in mind, we'll now move to item number 5, which is the approval of the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee public minutes. I'd like to note that a sentence has been added to item 12 on page 7. And this amendment states, the board secretary noted to the chair that there was no longer deputation for this item. If there are no other edits or corrections or amendments to the minutes, may I ask if someone move that the minutes be signed as correct?
Seconded.
Okay, seconded by Jess, moved by, sorry, I didn't.
Jim Meeks had their hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so moved by Jim, seconded by Jess. If you can also state your name, I don't have sometimes the luxury of seeing the entire screen, so my apologies for missing Jim. So moved by Jim, seconded by Jess, all in favor? That is approved. All right, so we'll now move to item number 6, which is the action items review. The action items were reviewed and discussed at the most recent meeting on May the 19th. And unless there are any questions on the action review item, I would suggest that we proceed to the CEO update, unless anyone has any question on the action items. I don't see any, so I'll now proceed to item number 7, which is the CEO update. Tom, over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Reid. And through the chair to the committee. As we move into June, we're recognizing a number of important occasions across Toronto Seniors Housing that reflects the diversity of our communities. This month brings together several occasions: National Indigenous History Month, Filipino Heritage Month, Pride Month, and Seniors Month. And it also marks the Toronto Seniors Housing 4th year anniversary. Across all of these, our focus is on celebrating people, sharing stories, and recognizing these experiences that shape our communities. For Pride Month, we are partnering with Toronto Community Housing to host a joint watch party for the parade on June 28th at 423 Yonge on the second floor terrace. And this is a really great opportunity for staff from both organizations to come, connect, and celebrate. And then for Filipino Heritage Month, we're sharing stories from Filipino staff across each of the 4 regions and highlighting their contributions and what has been their experience with Toronto Seniors Housing. For National Indigenous History Month, we're honored to welcome Elder Blue Waters, who will be hosting a lunch and learn session for staff. Elder Blue Waters is a respected Indigenous elder, a two-spirited knowledge keeper, and a community educator who shares teaching grounded in culture, lived experience, and spirituality. They are also involved in community outreach and public education, including work with organizations such as Toronto Tempo, where they contribute to advancing inclusion, awareness, and cultural understanding. During the session, they will speak about the role and significance of elders in Indigenous communities, sharing their knowledge, teaching, and lived experience. Their presence reflects an important connection across National Indigenous History Month, Pride Month, and Seniors Month. And then, as I said, June is also Seniors Month, and it marks our 4th anniversary. And to recognize this, we'll be sharing a short video each week for 4 weeks, highlighting 4 different tenants from each of our regions and their experiences in our communities. Each story highlights a different part of community life. One will highlight friendship, volunteerism, creativity, and supports that help seniors age at home. And just these activities just continue to show how we recognize and celebrate the people who make Toronto Seniors Housing what it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. You got a lot of activities going on in June, lots of diverse activities. And
yeah, June's a big month. June's a big month.
Yeah, it is. So maybe what you can do is circulate some of these activities to the board. So if any board member is interested or able to attend, it'd be good to participate as well if it's open to board members. Are there any questions for Tom? Okay. I don't see any hands up or any indication that there are questions for Tom, so we will now move on to item number 8. But I think, Karen, we have a deputant on this, so we'll, if you can admit the deputant, we could proceed with the deputation of Mr. Marguerite before we go into the item proper.
The deputant has arrived into the meeting, Mr. Chair.
All right, so thanks, Karen. Mr. Marguerite, welcome again. Thank you for being part of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation community and always interested in your perspective. And thanks for being part of the deliberations today. I'll just remind you that you've got 5 minutes to depute. And also, if you can, as we normally advise all our deputants, if you can stay away from identifying any individual or any personal information associated with anyone here or elsewhere. So with that in mind, sir, welcome again, and I'll cede the podium to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to give some comments on the tenant experience, that my personal experience as a tenant with this corporation. So about 2 years ago, I started reporting to the management of the corporation that my unit, the unit above mine was illegally modified. And by the building staff, after I complained about some maintenance issues and other issues in the building, and MLS issued some orders. And basically the building staff started fumigating my unit. So I repeatedly complained about it, including to the board of directors and to this QTEC committee. And there was no investigation, they were professional. And when Bernard Bettel, president, started complaining to the operations leadership about the issue and the harassment and the racial hate, this kind of complementing issues, the operations leadership prohibited to investigate local staff this case. They were prohibited to come to my unit. To accept my complaints, to investigate them, or do anything about my complaints whatsoever. I was advised to forward them to the Northwest manager office, who basically replied like in different statements and confirmed prohibition to investigate my complaints. So I met with the CEO at some point discussing those complaints with a current chair of the Toronto section. And basically the recommendation was that the local staff, as I understand, was penalized for misuse of building funds. And a recommendation to me was to transfer to a different unit. So I then tried to do it and file an application, which is 2 years on file with no movement whatsoever, and without any comment from the responsible operations staff. I also met with the operations leadership, and initially I was offered the transfer, but under the pretense that I have no evidence of fumigation of my unit and the building hallways. When I started showing evidence, I was told that basically I threatened these people to testify. And as a result, they proceeded with filing LTB eviction application, claiming that I have to get my lawyer to get back to communication table. Then after we, with Garden Girls, submitted reports about stolen community funds in the building, which amounted to money laundering scheme with a serious amount of money. Basically, this case escalated to the level that they refused to discuss any settlement whatsoever. And they started fabricating accusations against me. The local staff was instructed to offer tenants free parking, blind the eye closing on violations of rent geared to income, very serious violations. If they submit false complaints about me that were not investigated, local staff basically blocked an investigation, and they were put automatically in my file as something which is true. So now I have very short time to continue. So what I want to ask now, the board and this committee, is to remove my files completely, all aspects of my file from supervision of the operations branch leadership, and assign it to a different management level at the corporation or directly to the chair. And secondly, I'm asking the chair personally to set up independent investigation in bypass of the corporate leadership, and to basically to properly investigate and reverse illegal alterations made in the above unit to continuously contaminate my unit with toxic chemicals. Thank you.
All right, so thanks a lot, Mr. Margulies. As always, we appreciate your perspective. You've made two specific requests. One is that the file be removed from the local folks and be assigned to someone else. And you also asked for an independent investigation. We're going to discuss this as a board, and I will provide you with a response on both of those items in short order. Thank you very much. So we'll now proceed to item number, a continuation of item number 8, which is the tenant experience survey. So do we have forum? Sarah Lam admitted. Karen?
Yes, we have the folks from forum admitted now, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so let me take this opportunity to welcome our colleagues from forum. I think we've got Sarah Lam and Paulo Lanes. Hope I'm pronouncing your names correctly. Sarah is the Senior Research Director and Paulo is the Senior Research Analyst. Both are from Forum, and they will provide us with the results of the tenant experience survey. We've assigned 60 minutes to this item, so I'm going to suggest to the presenters to keep it as brief as possible without sort of compromising information that the board needs to get into, because I want to have a fulsome conversation at committee. So over to you, Grant. I don't know who is going to set this up, you or Tom, and then over to our colleagues from Forum.
Thank you, Fareed. Through the chair, I'll just give a very brief overview and then turn it over to Forum. I just want to acknowledge also we have Ayushman Banerjee with us today. Ayushman's the lead in the Toronto Seniors Housing team on the survey project. This is Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation's second tenant experience survey. Our last survey was in 2023-2024. The results before you show comparatives between that survey and this survey, and I won't go into the specifics because Forum is going to go through that. The report that is before you, the staff report, covers some of the overall results, some of the different level of analysis, and also notes some specific priority areas to focus improvements coming out of the results of the survey. And there will be more details in the attachments. There are 3 attachments on the package. One is a summary presentation, which is what Forum will go over in a couple of moments. There's the full survey report, the more detailed, complete results package. And then the questionnaire that was administered as part of the survey is attached as well. Within the package as well, we have a brief summary of some of the next steps. We can talk about that after as well if you would like, including what we're doing next. That includes reviewing further actions that are coming out of this, how this will be an input into the future strategic directions, and some communication activities associated with this for tenants and staff. I will advise that the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee has had a chance to be briefed on the results of the survey, and a bit of detail from that is in the staff report. And then our next survey is 2 years from now, as we've done, so every 2 years. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah and Paulo to walk us through a brief presentation. And Karen, if you could put that up, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant, for the introduction. I believe I should be able to share my screen, so I'll give that a try.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see it okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right, well, as Grant introduced, my name is Sarah Lam, and I'm a Senior Research Director at Forum, and today I'll be going over the results from the 2025-26 Tenant Experience Survey. So for today's agenda, we're just going to keep it pretty brief. So we've really condensed the material, but I want to note that all of the content is available in the full report that Grant mentioned is in the package. And then we've also set aside some time at the end for any questions and discussions. So TSHC and Forum Research first collaborated back in 2023 to conduct a comprehensive survey to gain insights into tenants' experiences living in TSHC buildings. And then recently, at the end of last year, we conducted the second tenant experience survey to see whether tenants' perceptions have changed. So we used the same methodology as we did back in the 2024 survey. The surveys this time around were mailed out in November of last year, and then we received responses up until February 13th of this year. 2,952 responses were received, giving us a response rate of 22%. Throughout the presentation, as Grant mentioned, you'll see that we've included some trending comparisons to the 2024 Tenant Experience Survey wherever possible. And then just as a guideline, when making those comparisons to the 2024 results, a difference of 4 percentage points or more can be considered a meaningful change. And then anything less than that is what we consider as, uncertain or likely not a meaningful change. So now just moving on to the key insights from this year's survey. So tenants still feel positively about TSHC services, with 79% saying they are happy with services this year compared to 80% in 2024. And most tenants also remain proud to be tenants at TSHC, with 79% saying they're proud compared to 82% in 2024. And then new to this year's survey, we asked tenants whether they would be likely to recommend TSHC to others seeking social housing. So responses to this question resulted in a net promoter score of plus 42, which reflects a strong willingness from tenants to recommend TSHC to other seniors. And I'll talk a bit more about the NPS later. First, looking at satisfaction in a bit more detail, we see that in the Southeast region, agreement has declined from 78% in 2024 to 72% this year. We see a similar trend in the Southeast region when it comes to pride, where 77% agreed with the statement in 2024 compared to 72% this year. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we added this new question asking tenants how likely they are to recommend other seniors to join the waitlist to get a place at a TSHC apartment. So 59% gave a rating of 9 or 10, and so they're classified as promoters. 24% gave a rating of 7 or 8, and they're considered passives. And 17% gave a rating of 6 or lower and are considered detractors. So the net promoter score is calculated by taking the percentage of promoters and subtracting the percentage of detractors. So this means that the net promoter score can range from anywhere from minus 100 if everyone is a detractor, all the way to plus 100 if everyone is a promoter. So in this case, the NPS would be calculated by 59 minus 17, which gives us plus 42. And with this positive net promoter score, this tells us that tenants are more likely to recommend TSHC to others than to not recommend TSHC. And just to provide some additional context to better understand whether the score of plus 42 is considered good or bad, the industry standard is that achieving an NPS of plus 20 is considered good, with plus 20 being excellent, and then anything above 80 would be considered world class. Results from this year's survey shows that some areas have remained consistent with only a 1 or 2 percentage point difference compared to the 2024 results. So this includes areas related to building maintenance and cleanliness, getting updates about work in their building, clear policies, understanding their rights, and understanding their lease and responsibilities as a tenant. When it comes to the opportunities for improvement, we see that some areas that were identified for improvement in 2024 have shown some gains, while other areas remain steady. So tenant satisfaction with the information provided to access services and supports have improved this year. However, it also continues to be an area with room for improvement compared to other measures. Service request experiences remain pretty stable, and satisfaction with pest treatment outcomes has increased slightly, although many tenants still need help preparing for treatments. 69% of tenants who have requested repairs or maintenance services said they were kept up to date with information on how the work was going. I do want to note the way the survey was, this question was asked changed from a 5-point agreement scale back in 2024 to a yes/no question this year. However, when we still make that comparison, results remain pretty similar. So back in 2024, 66% agreed with this statement. Still looking at tenants who have requested a repair or maintenance service, 76% agreed that the work was done quickly, which is fairly consistent compared to 74% in 2024. We also see an improvement in the Northwest region from 74% to 78% this year. We also asked these residents whether they were happy with how well the work was done, and 77% agree that they were happy, which is pretty similar compared to 2024. However, we see a decline in the Southeast region, but an increase in the Southwest region. For those who had their units treated with for pests, 58% agreed that they received enough help getting ready for pest treatment, and there is a decline in the Southeast region where 50% agreed this year compared to 59% in 2024. We also asked these residents if they were happy with the outcome of the pest treatment, and 63% agree that they were happy, which remains pretty stable compared to 60% in 2024. And we also see improvements in the Southwest and Northeast regions. When it comes to access to services, 65% agree that TSH helps them get information to access the services they need, which is a notable improvement compared to 61% agreeing in 2024. And we also see improvements in the Northeast and Northwest regions. 56% said they know who to contact at TSH if they need help accessing well-being and support services. This is a slight decrease compared to 61% back in 2024 saying they knew who to contact, and this decrease is seen across all 4 regions. When we compare the previous 2 slides that I just went through, we can see that those who know who to contact at TSHC are much more likely to agree that TSH helps them get information to access the services they need. So with 78% of them agreeing, while only 30% of those who don't know who to contact agreed with this statement. Here we've summarized other key insights that have emerged. When it comes to tenant and staff interactions, overall scores remain high, but tenant satisfaction with staff responsiveness and respectful treatment has declined this year. And when it comes to community participation, we found that half of the tenants do not participate in community programs, mainly because they're happy without them. However, for those who do participate in community programs, the majority of them are happy with the programs. So just looking more closely at community participation, this was a new question that was added to this year's survey, and we found that 50% of tenants said that they participated in activities and programs offered in their building, while 41% said that they did not. For those who did participate in activities and programs in their building, 79% agreed that the activities and program offerings are helpful. I do want to note that in 2024, this question was asked to all residents, whereas this year we only asked this question to tenants who actually said that they participated in activities and programs. So as a result, the comparison to the 2024 scores should be interpreted with caution. This was also a new question to this year's survey. We asked tenants who did not participate in activities and programs why they didn't. So the most mentioned reason is because they're happy without it, with 48% selecting this option. Respondents also mentioned other reasons why they aren't participating, which may suggest opportunities to engage these tenants. Continuing on, we also noticed that program participation seems to have a positive impact on tenants across multiple facets, such as sense of community. So overall, 56% of tenants agree that they feel there is a strong sense of community in their building. However, we can see here that agreement is much higher among tenants who participate in programs and activities compared to those who don't. So 67% compared to 37% who don't participate for other reasons. And then here, 73% of tenants agree that they feel respected by other tenants. And again, that same pattern, those who participated in activities and programs are more likely to agree compared to those who didn't participate. And 49% agree that they can share their ideas about organizing social activities in their building. Again, that same pattern here. Those who participate in activities and programs are much more likely to agree to this statement compared to those who didn't. 82% of tenants agree that staff treat them with respect, which is lower compared to 87% back in 2024. We also see a decline in Southeast and Northeast regions. And then lastly, 76% of tenants agree that they feel that the building staff can act on it if they make a request about an issue they have, which is a decline compared to 81% back in 2024. We also see a decline in the Southeast and Northeast regions. One other thing I do want to note that in the 2024 survey, 2 separate questions were asked, but because the questions were similar, we combined it into one question this year's survey. Okay, so moving on to the next section, we took the analysis a step further by conducting a driver's analysis to identify priority areas for future action by exploring which areas matter most to tenants. So the findings from the driver's analysis is what we primarily use to help inform our recommendations on what makes a difference. I do want to note that the driver's analysis includes areas that I haven't touched on during today's presentation just due to our limited time. However, you can find everything in the full report. Okay. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if there's a question. I heard some noise. I'll continue. For this, we first conducted an analysis to understand how much of an impact each area has on overall satisfaction. So these are what we call drivers of overall satisfaction, and these are plotted horizontally on the graph. And then we compare this with the actual satisfaction with each individual area, and that's plotted. Sorry, is there a question or is it just background noise?
I think that was just background noise.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
okay.
recommend that if you can keep your system on mute until the presentation is over, that would help.
Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. Anyway, so the actual satisfaction with each individual area is plotted vertically on this chart. So basically, this gives us these 4 quadrants where each individual area can fall into one of these 4 quadrants. So we'll focus on the bottom right. So any areas that fall into that bottom right quadrant are considered primary areas for improvement because they have a relatively high impact on overall satisfaction, but they have lower individual satisfaction scores relative to other areas. So increasing satisfaction in these areas will have the largest impact on overall satisfaction. A couple other things I want to point out in this chart is you'll notice that some of these areas have an arrow beside them. It basically indicates how it moved in terms of its positioning in this chart compared to the 2024 analysis. And then also in the primary areas for improvement quadrant, so the red one, you'll see that some of those areas have an asterisk beside it, and that's basically to indicate that these were areas that were also identified as primary areas for improvement back in 2024. So now looking at the results, when we conducted the driver's analysis for all tenants, we see that there are 5 primary areas for improvement: comfort sharing concerns and complaints to TSHC, building staff acting on the requests, and information to access services were areas that were identified as a primary area for improvement back in 2024 and identified again this year. The other 2 primary areas for improvement include feeling safe in common spaces and TSHC news and updates being helpful. We also ran a second version of the driver's analysis where only tenants who participated in programs and activities were included in the analysis, basically so we can understand how program offerings fit into this model. So looking at the results from this chart, we see that it's actually pretty similar as the one in the previous slide, where we have the same 5 primary areas for improvement, but with the addition of the building offering programs that they like and are helpful. So to summarize the survey findings, we integrated the insights from the driver's analysis with the detailed survey results to identify key actions that could have a significant impact on overall tenant satisfaction. So by focusing on these areas, TSHC can make a meaningful difference to tenants' general sense of satisfaction. So when it comes to tenants who participate in activities and programs, enhancing program quality and options, as well as engaging tenants who are not participating, can impact overall satisfaction. Ensuring tenants feel safe in shared spaces is another area that can be improved upon, since performance is slightly lower than the average, and it's been identified as having a high impact on overall satisfaction. TSHC can also continue to refine information for tenants to access services and supports. Another area relates to communication with tenants, where TSHC can deliver more creative and helpful updates and content to tenants. And then also continuing to create spaces for tenants to share the concerns and complaints will also be impactful. And lastly, on staff-tenant relations, working with staff to help tenants meet their requests more effectively and more respectfully can help improve overall satisfaction. Okay, so just to quickly wrap up today's presentation, I just have a few more slides about the tenants. So the demographic profile of tenants who responded to the survey, to this year's survey, was pretty similar compared to the 2024 survey. This year, we also conducted a cluster analysis where we identified 3 groups of tenants with similar response patterns across key experience measures. So the results of this analysis, like the full results, can be found in the report, but to summarize, these 3 segments are the first one being generally satisfied tenants. So these are tenants that report strong community engagement and high levels of satisfaction with TSHC. And they also represents the largest segment of tenants. The second one is the concerned but informed tenants. So they understand policies well, but they report lower satisfaction with building conditions and have limited community engagement. And then the third one is the satisfied but disconnected tenants. So these tenants, they're satisfied with building conditions, but they're disconnected because they show lower engagement and less understanding of policies. And lastly, just to finish things off, I'm just going to share some additional thoughts that tenants shared to make TSH better for tenants like themselves. While most tenants didn't provide any suggestions, 43% of them did. And so the most common area that tenants shared their thoughts on were related to staff concerns and property management, with 23% of tenants mentioning suggestions related to these topics. That brings me to the end, and so I think I'll just open up the floor for any questions or discussions. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So maybe you can take the presentation down, Karen, and then we can open up the conference for discussion. Thanks again, Sarah. Appreciate the work that you and your colleagues did on this, and also thanks to all of our staff. I know there's a fair bit of work involved in doing this, and I certainly appreciate the somewhat of a trend analysis comparing where we are today as opposed to last year. I have a few questions, but I'm going to open it up for colleagues to ask any questions that they might have, and then I will jump in. Just go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few questions as well. I note that the respondents seem overbalanced to people who speak English. And I'm wondering if there is a way to engage more people who do not speak English first language, or perhaps the balance is that people are attempting to answer the questionnaire in English, and then the middle area, which is sort of a non-answer, is over. So in that area, I have mentioned this before to the board, is that I think the use of staff members to help with this work might be a low-cost way to get a better representation from members, because people tend to respond to peers better than they do to surveys. And having general meetings or door-to-door meetings with staff members would be one way to get more people involved, get more volunteer opportunities from the people who are in the building who are not participating, and also to reach out to those who are not able to, because of physical limitations or language limitations, unable to participate in the surveys. That's one area. The other is I don't see any demographics for age representations. We have 16% of the people who live in the buildings as being over 85. Are they equally represented in your findings? And I do have a couple other questions, but I'm going to leave it at that for the time being.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Jess. Who want to take this? You want to start, Grant, and then maybe you can bring in whoever else you think might
Sure.
to be involved in this.
Sure. Yes, thank you. So through the chair, with regards to language, it was a factor that we looked to embed into the methodology of the survey to make the survey available in different languages and different opportunities and channels to actually complete the survey. But you do make a point, Jess, that only about 3% of tenants chose to actually complete the survey in a language other than English. This is something that we will continue to look at, and I'm not sure a forum can comment on this in terms of whether they feel there's any impact on the survey itself and the results. We don't believe so from that lens. One other thing I will mention is with regards to getting others involved in promoting the survey, such as staff members or other tenants. This is something that I think would be great to continue to explore. I know that this is something that we worked with staff, for example, as well, to help encourage tenants to complete the survey. There were different reasons in some cases why we heard tenants completed or didn't complete the survey, but we certainly want to keep the survey response rate at a high level. The response rate we had for this survey allows us to be able to use the analysis that's been presented. So we were satisfied with this, but we'd like to see strong responses. Maybe I'll just ask Forum if they could comment on anything about the language aspect from their lens.
Yeah, so with regards to the survey methodology, we did provide many different options for tenants to complete the survey. So the initial survey package was mailed out to all the households. So they had the opportunity to send back a paper version, but we also had it available online, and they could also call us if they prefer to do it over the phone. So in addition to those, we also offered the survey in 13 other additional languages other than English. So there were opportunities to complete the survey in other languages. But it just seems, just looking at the responses that we got, not many people chose to answer the survey in those languages. I don't know if anyone else had anything to add to that. Ayushman?
Through the chair, if I may just add to the comment about language. Yes, Sarah did make a good point that we've tried to make the survey as accessible as possible in terms of language, but I will point out that amongst the overall respondents, about 33% of our tenants noted that they have a preference to speak another language. That indicates that amongst that chunk of tenants, a good number were able to still complete the survey in English. So there's
All
a
right,
slight
thanks.
nuance there.
Yeah, thank you. Brenda, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. With respect to language, language is often a proxy for other things. So it's a proxy for whether they understand it, whether they're involved currently. It's not good enough just to offer a survey in another language if you don't seek to direct people to that option. They have to wade through all the stuff in order to get to that option, if you know what I mean. So I think it may speak to the need to have more outreach specific activities to get a better representation. In a housing authority, it has, what was the percentage of people not born in Canada or who don't speak English as their mother tongue? It's over 50%. To then only get a 3% response rate speaks loudly to me about the need to do some work here. So I'm not satisfied just going forward that we can say, well, we offer it in 12 other languages. You need to do outreach, okay? And the suggestion by Jess of a stack may be one approach. I don't know the ethnic and language representation in stack, but that's a good start. And if not, other volunteers, okay? My other comments were on this issue of participation and engagement. I think that's kind of the nub of a lot of these answers or non-answers. And I think we need to tease out more why people don't participate in some of the programs. Is it because they feel they're outside people doing it instead of staff related or staff controlled people? This is not an issue for the survey people, but more how we manage ourselves and how we conduct the concept of participation and engagement. And it also means some staff energy and effort, as much as it may also mean volunteers. So we may need going forward either training of staff, current staff, or maybe it might require us to have additional staff to specifically do engagement work, okay, which is a very specific skill and talent. And if we think our goal is aging in place, participation, engagement, then we'll have to treat these soft assessment of engagement and participation seriously, because we could be offering lots of programs and it doesn't appreciably increase the participation or engagement rate. All right, so I think we need to tease that out a little more and a little more analysis, sub-analysis, because I certainly would like to have a better idea going forward. Well, what is impeding people or inhibiting people from participating more, feeling a sense of engagement, feeling a sense that they're involved. And that may in turn reflect all our other indicators like respect from staff, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, thanks, Brenda. Those are good comments. I mean, I think there are a couple of things that come out of that, and some of which I was going to address as well. I know, Jess, you've got your hand up. I'll bring you in a second. One is to perhaps look, and this is not, I'm not suggesting that the survey doesn't reflect this or this wasn't built in, but perhaps looking at a more thoughtful and deliberative outreach so that we're ensuring
Yeah.
that we're getting to the
Yeah.
right individuals. And secondly, are there any systemic issues on the participation side that are preventing people from participating, which is not necessarily language, but are there other considerations that are preventing seniors from participating in the survey? I've got a couple of other things, but those two I think are important consideration as we move forward. And I'd also encourage forum, because there are a couple of things in my mind. Are there things that, and I don't need you to respond now, maybe you can respond after, Jess, but sort of think about, are there things that that we can do? Are there questions that we can ask to tease out some of these things? You folks are the expert. Are there ways that we can enhance our survey so that we can come up with results that are perhaps a bit more granular, rather than sort of, relying on, and I'm not saying this is the case, but relying on the same cohort to provide comments year over year, because they're the ones who see the need to participate. So just go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Crisanti has his hand raised.
Oh, my apologies, Councillor. Go ahead, sir. We'll take you, then we'll go with Jess.
No, Jess is first. No worries.
Jess had one wrong, so we'll let him sort of think about his questions.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll bring you in. I'm sure Jess
right.
wouldn't mind. I can't see him, so if he's upset, I wouldn't know.
Oh yeah, I got a very yellow hand at the corner there. So first off, I just want to thank Sarah and the team there. This is really, really good information, and I'll get to my thoughts on that just a little bit later. But just a couple of things that came to mind. I took a couple of notes. What was the question that led to the answer? Knowing who to contact, where I believe the response there, about half the people knew who to contact. And can you please refresh my memory on that one, Sarah? Or whomever. I don't see Sarah there now.
Yeah, she's here.
Yeah, would you like me to bring that slide up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So knowing who to contact, that's the concern or the question.
This one, right?
Yes. So more than half the tenants say that they know who to contact. So that means almost half of the tenants are not clear or don't know who to contact. Is that what I'm reading into this?
So 23% explicitly said they don't know who to contact. However, the remaining 22% didn't want to answer this question or left it blank.
Well, that's really interesting. I'm wondering why that came together in the way that it did. But even at 23%, I find it quite concerning. And in terms of what more can we do? So that's an important. Nothing happens, nothing moves forward unless we know who to speak to, unless there's some relationship with someone. So our seniors in our buildings can comfortably speak to someone, contact someone, and feel comfortable answering a question like that. So that's a concern. Let me move on to another question or result. This is the slide, Sarah. You can tell me which one it was. 73% feel respected. So what was the question that led to that response? Is that the one?
Is it this one, or is there a different
respect.
one? Respect.
Do they have the right information?
Or other. This one is staff treat me with respect, but there was another one about
where the tenants feel respect.
Yeah. Let me find that one.
Yeah.
I think it's this one. So this one, it's I feel respected by other tenants.
Oh, that's different.
Okay, and sorry, do you know what the question, Sarah, was that led to that? Well, you actually have a question that asked them, do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Do you feel respected? What was the question? Do you know? So
we asked them how much they agree or disagree with the following statements. I feel respected by other tenants. And so they have the option to answer strongly disagree.
Oh, there it is. I see it at the bottom. Oh.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, all of the questions are at the bottom.
Okay. Actually, maybe that number could be better, but you know, if 73% of Torontonians felt respected, I think we'd have a lot less crime in the city. It's not, that's a pretty good number. You know, we'd like to see it for sure. Last one, I had 3 points here. Yeah, so it did noted as well that, for example, when it comes to general happiness and the services and so on, 79% said they're generally happy compared to 80% previous year. Maintenance, 83 versus 85. Cleanliness, again, 85 versus 86. Safety, 81, 83. And what else here? Common spaces, 76 versus 78. And understanding their lease and commitments and responsibilities, 89 versus 88 is a little higher, 1 point higher. I mean, there's no margin of error that applies to something like this. So virtually there's been, you know, can we agree there's been no change virtually, and it's not really worse, it's not really better. We're there.
Yep, so let me actually bring us back to the methodology slide. So we are able to calculate a margin of error. So it's plus or minus 1.6% at the 95% confidence level. And we actually use this to help create a guideline or like a good rule of thumb in terms of you know, interpreting those changes, those differences between last wave and this wave. Basically, if it's a difference of 4 percentage points or more, we're pretty confident that it's a meaningful change. But if it's less than that, then it's likely not meaningful, or it's like uncertain if it's a real change or not.
Okay, good. And sorry if I'm making you reiterate that, because I know Forum Research, you do a lot of political polling and so on. There's margin of errors all the time, and we're in, you know, silly season now. I'm sorry, election season now. So we are. So there'll be a few margin of error, you know, reports coming from Foreign Research, I'm sure, when it comes to the work you're going to do in this election. So given that the percentages are so tight, do you agree then, Sarah, that virtually there's like no change year over year?
What are you referring to as no change?
To
Sorry.
all these, you know,
All these questions,
different
yeah.
categories that I just mentioned, you know, maintenance and cleanliness and safety and so on.
These ones are pretty consistent.
So, correct. That's what I'm
Yes.
referring to.
Yeah. So these ones, it's they're all pretty consistent. Yeah, because it's only, you know, a percentage point or two difference compared to 2024. I do want to note in the report, when there are meaningful differences, we do try to note them. So let me see if I can find an example of that, but we kind of just note them with these different colors right here. We just kind of highlight them with like a green if it's a positive change, or a red if it's a decline.
Okay. Councillor, anything else?
Yeah, sorry, just got distracted for a moment. Yeah, just one final thing.
Right.
I really think is important. There's a lot of good work that's been done here, and when I look at the recommendation is pretty straightforward. It's recommended that we receive the report for information. Should something like this not have a more meaningful recommendation that speaks to specifically the various different results to be transferred over or moved over to different departments to have something in there that somehow takes these results and moves them into action items versus just receiving for information? Or does it happen organically? Fareed, I don't know if you know the answer to that, or, you know, but
Yeah,
that's my only concern.
Yeah, before Tom speaks, let me sort of give my perspective. And Councillor, you've been preempting some of my consideration, but that's good. We're thinking along the same lines. And just a couple of very quick comments on access to services. I agree 100%. I mean, I think that's why we exist. We exist to provide customer service, for lack of a better word, and that value has to permeate the entire corporation. So if someone in the corporation feels that they don't have access to information, we've got to do something about it. And secondly, before I ask Tom, the one piece that I'm really interested in is that slide 11 that was brought up previously. I don't need the slide back up, but it'd be interesting to see in those areas where we've made some investment, what has been the improvement, if any, of those 5 or 6 areas? Because it seems like it's fairly consistent, which is good. I mean, there is a bit of a degradation in some areas, but that's not, I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's marginal, but I think it'd be really good for us to, which is to your point, rather than simply receiving the report, is an opportunity to say, perhaps the board can have a bit more of an analysis by staff to better understand how those areas compare to the investments that we are making, and whether or not there needs to be some targeted and focus on some of these areas. Tom,
Yes,
I'll let you
thank you.
respond, and then we'll have Jess.
Yes, through the chair to the committee. And sir, if you could just put up slide 33, I think it was, and this is to the to Councillor, to your question, kind of about what's next. So this report was for kind of information today, the presentation of methodology, key results, but we certainly have to come back to, and we'll come back to the board with our kind of our work plan, our recommended work plan for the survey. And I would suggest that it would focus primarily in these areas. So when you look at that, what was driving change, where we most needed to make the change of the most impact on quality of life. So these would be those areas where I think, first of all, we have to take kind of closer look at the results across the corporation, across the various regions. There's the opportunity to talk to staff and tenants, and then we have to embed this in terms of what is the specific work that can be, and actions that can be attributed to this various areas. The way we've done that in the past has been through the performance management plan with leadership, identifying some of these key areas that they'll need to take action for. So just wanting to use that, kind of as an example, that they're absolutely, the important part now is in these areas where we want to see change. What are some of the specific actions and that need to take place, and bring those overall actions back to the board.
But Tom, that's good. I mean, we're taking this and we are, implementing, actioning various aspects and categories and bringing it back to the board. But again, the motion that really doesn't say that. Anybody looking at this for the first time, saying, okay, it's great stuff, but they've done nothing with it. It's only received for information. Received for information here on this side of the fence, when we're receiving something, usually that means we do nothing. We receive it, it disappears. So your thoughts, and if the wording could be somehow adjusted to reflect what you just described.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. We can amend the motion.
I'll leave that with you. Those are my thoughts.
We can amend the motion to reflect Tom's comment, Councillor, because I think you're right. There are things in here that I think perhaps the board needs to get some report back on. Jess, go ahead.
Yes, as you know, language is very important to me. So I find it a bit disturbing on page 69 of the report that tenants were classified as promoters, passives, or detractors. I think this begs the question of why people are tenants. And for many people, it's an economic reason. Older people tend not to have the same level of income, and certainly live in Toronto seniors housing, having rent geared to income, have a lower income than the mean of Toronto. And I think that to say that people are unhappy and detractors might misrepresent what their intent is. So I think that we need to review those words and perhaps find better language that properly represent them. I note that my previous question about whether or not the survey was had and responded. The other area that I think would be of interest is that 51% of all tenants have some sort of accessible issue. 21% of them have multiple challenges. And are they under or overrepresented in a specific area for satisfaction? I think these are areas that need to be addressed because with a growing population of older people, 16% of our population are over the age of 85. And I think that's an important factor. We need to look at the needs of those people. And I know that and others will talk about the ISM, and I'll have other questions at that point. But I think these are important knowledge that we need to sort of grind into a little bit more.
Thanks. Grant, I see your hand is up.
Thank you.
So Brenda.
Through the chair. So to that point about the promoters, passives, and detractors, that is really associated with the methodology that's used for this net promoter score. It's not meant to be an actual reference to our tenants. It's more about how the scores are interpreted in the context of that methodology. And that is standard for that type of net promoter score methodology. Forum could speak to that further, but it certainly wasn't intended to represent some kind of a characterization of our tenants. It's more about the way that particular stat is actually used. And with regards to the question about, are there significant associated results for different age groups in the context of the results here? This is something that, and maybe Forum could comment on, the analysis and where there were cross references in terms of different factors that came into sort of view. If that had been the case, that age was one of those, it would have actually shown up in the analysis that's being presented. So I believe that can be interpreted that there were not significant differences.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Brenda?
Following somewhat from Jess's points, the issue of access services and information about services. I don't know whether we're able to drill down these figures even more, not just this report, but more specific analysis. But one of the things we need to examine here is we technically have seniors service coordinators, and presumably they are your first contact for some information. So if people feel they don't know about services, what is that a function of? Is it we don't have enough staff? Or staff are overburdened to be available to give them timely information? Is it we need to do more paper announcements, maybe door to door, handing out of a monthly flyer with all the activities? I don't know the answer. I'm just suggesting that it's a financial analysis too, because if you peg what is your most useful and bang for the buck activities, do we put more money into extra staff so the access to services improves? Or is it a function of other things, whether it's language translation, paper notices, as distinct from social media notices? I just think we need to analyze this, because if people are not understanding where to get information, then that's a fairly serious thing. And given that we're supposed to be providing integrated service model, and the whole thing is predicated on providing a range of supports and services at their place of residence. And if it's still not working, then we got to ask why.
Yeah.
And so the question.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you not see my hand raised?
I see your hand raised.
Okay.
Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. Yes, through the chair to the committee. And yeah, but that is a very good point that you are making. And when we look at the senior services coordinators, right, they were part of the integrated service model, and part of that work was originally was thinking about this program's access to programs and services. What we have seen over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years, and I would invite Brad to if he sees this differently. But a lot of that focus with the senior services coordinators has been on things like supporting their, let's say, their annual review, making sure that they
Yes.
have the right paperwork to maintain their unit, right? So to really help to minimize evictions, support them, and
Right.
so that the access to finances, working with OACH, that has been a lot of the senior service coordinator. They've also worked a lot in tenant to tenant relationships within the buildings. But what this result is saying to us is we need to look at this area of contact, of access to service, right? And how that's happening. And I know that very shortly, Brad has put in place a virtual training for the senior services coordinators, or for how tenants can book virtually with the senior services coordinator to get that access, to get that time, and that may speak to some of this. Who do they know to contact, and so about services, right? So it's diving into this to better understand and improve that in that particular result about kind of who to access, and then subsequently access to service.
Because the staff have 2 or 3 buildings as their responsibility, which is quite a large caseload if you look at it as caseload. And there's an old phrase called social work works, but only if it's adequately staffed. So is this a function of staffing, right? Is it a function of technique of outreach? Do we need to rejig the job description of the senior service coordinators so that it's not just getting them prepared for their annual audits? It's a pretty high price to pay for staff to have their main tasks being administrative paperwork and getting people to comply with documents. That can be done more cost effectively in other ways. I personally would say you should use your higher paid staff, because that's what they are, social service coordinators, to be more focused on this issue of services and supports and engagement, because that's what I actually thought they were doing. And if that's the case, then it may mean extra staff so they have fewer buildings. Maybe there should be 1 staff person in a building. I mean, I don't know. I'm just spitballing this here, but I think you won't be able to answer the effectiveness or the efficacy of your efforts, because we're putting a lot of time and money into this. I want to make sure that if people don't know where to get help and services supports, then that to me is very concerning.
Okay, so I think that the point is well made, and we'll look forward to getting some feedback from staff. I want to move on to a few other people who haven't spoken yet. Lawrence, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Farid. Why is Southeast numbers have declined across several questions?
Yes. Through the chair to Lawrence, to the committee. That's true, and that is, I think, when people look at the survey, that is one of the results that we see. So it's an area where we have to, once again, kind of dive in a bit deeper to understand what's going on in that area. With the results, we do have the ability to see what's even from a building to building, so that we can be even a bit more forensic about how we approach that. But this would be one where, once again, we'd want to get more staff perspective, more tenant perspective in those areas, because it is, those results indicate that there's been a significant change, right? So we've got to understand that more. And I can say that it is one region where there has been a higher turnover of supervisory staff. We do know that, and so that is something that we would kind of want to factor and improve for now and moving into the future to help with those results.
Thank you.
All right, Jess, is that the legacy hand, or do you still have further issues you want to pursue? We're getting the Halliburton factor here. We can't, you're picking up.
Sorry. No, there was an opportunity to respond to my question about age and accessibility. Yeah, are marked in terms of, but if it doesn't trickle down to the entire spreadsheet, perhaps we're missing to be seen, so that we can understand the requirements of people who are older, I mean super seniors, people 55, and for people with accessibility challenges. So I think that, you know, as 51% of our population are have some form of accessible issue, is this a factor in terms of responding or in terms of engagement? I've known that has low, and is this and I think Deanna will probably that it may be a factor of the available support organizations, and that may not be as much available in the Southeast as other areas. And I want to sort of work out that one as well.
Yeah, Jess, you broke up quite a bit. I mean, I think Grant did address the demographic issue, but accessibility issue is certainly something that we can pursue. I don't think I catch everything you mentioned, but Grant, any response to that before we move on?
To the chair, just quickly, that we can take a look at possibly doing a deeper dive. There's a bit more on accessibility in the full report. And to Jess's point, yes, it's something that has some significant implications in the results in terms of, you know, our tenants noting disabilities. It can be a blend of different aspects there. In terms of significant correlation to other factors, that's something that I was getting at earlier, but we can go back and take another look at the results and see, because there are possibly things that will help inform there.
All right, thanks. Are there any other further comments before sorry, Jim, go ahead.
We were impacted by the budget in terms of hiring extra CSUs or CSCs, were we not?
Go ahead,
Yes.
Tom.
Yes, yeah, through the chair to the committee and to Jim. Yes, you're right. The community services coordinators, who are key in terms of that link to some of the access or supports for services. And just to be clear, we actually carved out the initial 4 community service coordinator positions with the shift of internal resources. A subsequent year, we applied for 2 more community services coordinators and received them from the city. But in last year's budget, we requested 2 more, and they were not received. So that has to do with, you know, those individuals and the ability then to help tenants access the service. But what we have to be careful about in this question, it was just saying that tenants knowing who to access, right? So I think we have to work on the tenants know for programs and services and support and access. It can be the community services coordinator as it relates to groups and bringing people into the home. And then as it relates to like an individual, let's say referral or support for a health services, the senior services coordinators can help that with that as well. So 2 aspects of that: helping the tenants know which staff to access, and then subsequently having the staff to be able to get more of those programs and services in place. So thanks, Jim. Yeah.
How about posting something on the community boards of, are you looking for services, and having different areas and saying, this is who you contact?
Thanks.
Yeah.
We can follow up on that for sure.
Yeah, thanks. So those are all very helpful comments. Just to mention a few things that came up, not a full summary, but I think there are a few things that came out of this. One was trying to look at our outreach strategy and make sure that we're thoughtful and exhaustive and deliberative to make sure that we're reaching tenants in a way that they want to be reached, in a way that they want to be reached. So I think that's an important consideration. The second issue is looking at any systemic barriers that might inhibit participation, what those are, and if we can find a way of eliminating, if not reducing those, would be helpful. The third issue is access to services, and I think this is an important consideration. And the approach that I would recommend that staff look into is no wrong door. So even if a I mean, to Jim's point, even if we were to post information on the buildings, tenants should have a number that they should be able to call and then get referred to whomever. So, you know, these are individuals who want access to service in a seamless way. So maybe when we come back with the recommendations, we can look at that. Other area is the area that Jess raised, which is look at perhaps a more granular demographic and accessibility considerations that might impact folks' engagement. I think Lawrence raised one issue that I was going to raise, which is there might be some geographical considerations here. When you look at the data, there's some consistency in some parts of the corporation that perhaps need a bit more attention. The one that didn't come up, and I'm sure this would be top of mind for some of our staff, is the issue around preparations for pest management, because I thought that the score there was also, you know, I know that a lot of work has been done in that regard, and we've heard continuously about the work that has been doing by Brad and his staff, and things are getting much better. There's something happening there, though, that I think might need a bit more of a conversation. The other thing that I would like to suggest, and maybe Forum can, I don't need a response now, but maybe Forum, if you can provide us with some advice on how we might be able to strengthen this survey to get the kind of issues that we're trying to grapple with. And I know that often, you know, staff would provide, but you folks are in the field, you understand what it is, you know how to tease out information. So if there's any recommendation in that regard, I think it might be helpful, asking the right question, but also looking at the methodology and whether or not that is optimizing the outcome that we're getting. So I think based on that, Tom, Grant, I think there was at least a suggestion from Councillor Crisanti that the motion be amended to not just receive the report, but to request staff to review and bring back recommendations to this committee. Is that something that the board is willing to propose an amendment to the motion? Okay, I must see a few thumbs up, so I assume that
yes.
folks are comfortable.
Sorry, through
with,
the chair, Mr. Chair, there was no motion for this item at this time.
Well, then we need
We'd
to move
like
a motion,
to make
then.
a motion. Yes.
Yeah. So
Thank
can
you.
I have someone move a motion, and the loose wording of the motion would be that committee requests staff to review and come back with some recommendations on the report. Is that reasonable? Okay, I see some thumbs up, so I assume that is a motion that staff will put into appropriate wording.
And a work plan, like
and a work plan. So can I get a mover and a seconder?
Yeah.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councillor Crisanti, seconded by Just. All in favor? That is approved. So I assume staff, if you can word that. Do we need to put the wording up on the screen now, or is it sufficient that the board moved it in a non-written way? Is that, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're not violating any of the rules of procedures here.
It does not need to be up on screen. It will be
Okay.
reflected precisely in the minutes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Karen. All right, so that was a good discussion once again. I want to thank Forum Research for the work that you have done. This certainly gives us a good idea of what's happening within the organization. I know that what we have seen is just the tip of the work that you have done. I also want to say thank you to all the staff who helped guide this work, and a particular thanks to our tenants who would have participated in this report. We certainly appreciate and value your opinion. And for those of you who are joining us, I would certainly encourage you to, if you haven't participated, to find a way to participate, to give us your feedback, and also spread the word around to your colleagues in your buildings to help make the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation building a better place by telling us what you think about the services that we provide.
Fareed? Just
yes,
here.
sir.
I think the one that hasn't been addressed or discussed is closing the loop. I think we'll get much better responses if tenants feel that their issues are being addressed and that they have been told what the response is.
I agree. So I'm fully expecting that will come back as part of the recommendations from staff, because I want to be able to, there's got to be some tangible outcome, and they've got to see some feedback. Absolutely. And that might be a way of encouraging them to participate 100%. All right, so that was good. Thanks again to everyone, and I look forward to staff coming back to committee and the board with a more fulsome response to the considerations that we heard. I know we are a bit behind time, so I'll sort of plow ahead with item number 9, which is the future strategic directions. Grant will go through his remarks or presentation, after which I'll entertain any questions or considerations that directors might have. So Grant, over to you.
Thank you. Through the chair, the report before the committee today is regarding the new strategic planning cycle and a short progress update. As the committee is aware, we've been undertaking consultation activities to inform the future revisions to the TSHC strategic directions. This is where we've retained the Beam Group to support us. There have been a number of activities as part of this consultation effort that are summarized in the report, including engagements with the board, various engagements with tenants, including at STAC, 3 different conversations there, regional tenant volunteer meetings, 4 of those, 3 tenant pop-ups. We've had significant engagement with staff as well, including 4 regional operations team sessions, a corporate session, leadership team, all people leaders. We've met with the board as well, as the board members are aware. We've had the partnership table involved, OACH, Toronto Community Housing, RPATH, and the City of Toronto in a dedicated session as well. Overall, 31 different sessions and 644 participants. I know the report says 638, I believe, but we can update that to 644. It's meant to be an interim update at this stage. Coming up soon at the July 8th board meeting, we will be bringing back the summary findings from this consultation effort. And the intent there is to have some more specific things that we've heard through all these different audiences that have been engaged, all these different voices, to inform the future strategic directions. And there'll be a summary presentation and a report that will be brought forward to the July 8th board. There'll also be an opportunity for the board to discuss those findings and to give us some guidance with regards to the next stage, which is actually revising the strategic directions, which we anticipate to then happen and come back for QTE in September and board in October, which is an expedited schedule based on our original timelines to respond to some of the earlier feedback on the process. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Any questions for Grant on the strategic plan update? Jess, go ahead, please.
Grant, to the chair and the board and the committee. Grant, I note that RMAP is only just been had their consultation. I was wondering, in as much as 51% of our population have an accessibility issue, their feedback, I think, would be very important. Is there any findings from the meeting on Friday?
Oh, yes. So yes, Jess is, I guess you're aware of the schedule of we had our last engagement on Friday. We do have some summary notes from that. There was a little bit of discussion with regards to how we engage tenants. Honestly, I'd have to go back to my notes because I wasn't prepared to answer that particular question, Jess, but I can certainly get back to you. We will be building those into the discussion in the document that we're working on with Beam. If you can give me a second, I can go back to my book and see what I have. I actually have 2 pages of notes here. Yes, one of the things was about looking at the scope of disability, not just being about physical disabilities and being more broadly interpreted. The other was looking at different opportunities to build resources for staff to be able to support tenants. They talked about things around some kind of a resource center idea. And they also talked about resources associated with how we support accessibility. So my apologies, I didn't have that top of mind, but I was able to find that.
Thank you. And regarding I don't know if they view dementia as a disability, but certainly it is front and center to my mind. And I wondered if there is anything. I note that there have been a session for people regarding dementia, and I'm wondering how that was dealt with, who led it, and what was the response? How long was the session?
So as part of the strategic directions consultation efforts, there was not a specific session associated with dementia and looking at that particular topic. So I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the session you're speaking of, Jess, but we can certainly loop back with you to try to understand that particular session.
Yeah,
it may be upcoming training you're speaking of, or some sort of staff engagement. I know there is some training coming up on dementia for some TSHC staff.
I think that's what I was talking about. There was a note about 238 people attended a dementia session. I don't know if it's the Alzheimer's Society that runs it or some other grouping. And the other question would be whether or not the research being done by the Dr. I'm sorry, I forget their name.
Agarwal.
In Hamilton, if that's reflected in the report.
So in that particular report, which will be forthcoming, it's not specific to Dr. Agarwal's research, although there are other inputs into the strategic directions that will also be considered. So for example, there's other material on today's agenda upcoming that includes some of that. So this report that I'm speaking of will be specific to the consultation effort, but not the only input into the future strategic directions. So those other items are also considerations.
Okay, Brenda, go ahead.
Just briefly, under disability, I was reviewing that. Dementia would be considered a cognitive disability, and I didn't note that in the listing of disabilities. It talked about physical disability, mobility. I don't know if the survey reflects cognitive disability as a question asked. If not, then just to keep in mind, increasingly they're separating out the dementia aspect as a cognitive disability. So you might want to look at that and whether that might start capturing some of the figures that Jess is referring to and will be a feature going forward.
Okay, thanks, Brenda.
We use the city's data for equity guidelines in terms of the categories for that particular, and actually all the demographics in the survey. We follow the city's guidelines for reference. We can look back and see if there's more information on that particular question, Brenda.
Do they call it cognitive disability, or would it just be under some other category? Or do you know?
I think it would probably be covered under one of the categories there, but we'd have to go back and look. They do have cognitive disabilities noted in there as a category.
Okay.
So I believe it would be there, but we could go back and see. We did summarize the view for the survey.
So that may point to the need going forward in our own capacities, maybe teasing out ways to capture that. You know, whether it's our own internal surveys, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, you won't get a handle on it. The number one reason people go to nursing homes is because of cognitive decline, not physical decline. You can be quite disabled and still be independent living in the community. Right?
Okay,
that's all.
Thanks. All right, so Grant, you can take a look at what the city is doing and how the city's definition would help us do this, or if there's a need for us to pursue this in a different way, I think would be helpful to Brenda and Jess's point. Are there any additional comments on this before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move on to item number 10. This is integrated service model. We've got a couple of deputants on this. So before we actually get into the item per se, I'm going to invite Mr. Margulis again. So Karen, if you can let me know when the deputant is in, I'll invite him to provide his deputation, and then we'll have, I think we have a second one. Yeah, Bill Lohman is also has
Ye-
also made a request to depute in this item, so we'll invite him after Mr. Margulis.
Correct, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Margulis has joined. Mr. Margulis?
Thank you, sir. If you can hear us, you can proceed with your deputation, and your 5 minutes start now. Okay, Karen, is Mr. Margulis in?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was watching the meeting on the YouTube, and that's why it
So we'll restart the clock, and we'll give you your 5 minutes starting now.
Okay, I appreciate it. I have two issues related to community engagement and developing basically this model of Connect Plus. So the first issue is basically what we see in our gardening team is the community engagement leadership is trying to destroy our team, surprisingly to you. And unfortunately, relying on some of the policies, for example, if LTB case is filed, they consider that you are guilty, even so there was no hearing, right? So, and at the same time, putting a blind eye on violating of other policies. Like in my case, I can tell you that the eviction for cause policy, fraud or wrongdoing policy, whistleblower protection policy, anti-harassment policy, and several others were violated by simply filing the landlord application with the LTB. And because of that, it should be revoked. But, and that's what I'm asking to do exactly. But for some reason, community engagement staff decided to enforce obsolete policy of, blocking people who kind of accused of something in participating in community activities. So what we have as a result, I'm one of the leading members of our team. We were just last year having prize from the mayor, and I'm constantly bringing young volunteers to our team, and I'm also contributing to city council meetings, and I see a sharp contrast, because what is happening here, the community engagement staff is trying to block, for example, people like me from participating in the meetings and in development of our team. This is not going to work, but this is wrong in principle. You cannot enforce some of the policies and put a blind eye on violating on numerous other policies. Either you enforce all of them because it is obligation of the board to follow shareholder directions, or you enforce none. And by the way, this policy should be updated because just 2 hours, the last city council meeting, the mayor devoted to engaging criminal use into the development of our city, making them healthy contributors to our city. That's exactly what you should try to do instead of breaking the existing teams. Now, the second thing is related. So you have a practice, and maybe you don't know about this practice. What the community engagement staff practices is blocking tenants from participating in volunteer meetings. This is shocking. You go to city council and participate in city council meeting, you submit deputations, you submit comments, you sit and listen how they vote. Councilor Kasantik would confirm that. But you cannot go to volunteer meetings in the building. You cannot go to gardener meetings in the building. They refuse to post the notice of the meeting. This is shocking. How, and not surprising that then the staff, which is growing, by the hour, what they report, growth of volunteers from 300 to 400 in a 15,000 people community. And this is the direct result of blocking people, ordinary people, from participating in volunteer meetings. I'm asking you to review this practice, to put an action item and remove this practice completely. This is not even a policy. This is kind of a wrong practice. You need to allow, this is retirement communities. This is not CIA, this is not FBI. There are no secrets in gardening meetings. and they can vote if you approve them as volunteers, but other people should come, try to contribute, get gradually engaged, and submit volunteer applications. This is the only way how you grow the volunteers community. And you are now prohibiting, the community engagement staff is prohibiting people, blocking people from engaging in volunteer activities. And what they discuss at their secret meetings, they discuss ordinary things, the plan, how corporation can develop this, the city services to elderly, this kind of stuff. This is ordinary thing that everyone in the building should know. So please post notices and open all volunteer, regional volunteer meetings, gardening meetings, any volunteer meetings to everyone who lives in the building, who lives in the region. Don't worry, we have a very large recreation hall. Tom Hunter knows this. He played drums recently at our hall. So please review this practice and remove it completely. Thank you.
No, thanks again. Appreciate your comments, and I'll follow up. We'll follow up with staff to see whether or not these practices are in place and why they are in place, and we will review and take a look at it. And thanks again for your recommendations. Appreciate again your engagement in the work of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, and thanks again for your deputation. And we'll follow up with staff in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have a second deputant. Karen, can you admit Mr. Bill Lohman?
Mr. Lohman has joined the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lohman, it's always a pleasure to see you, sir. Welcome again to the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation QTE Committee. Appreciate your engagement as always, and I'll invite you to depute. You've got 5 minutes starting now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to members of the committee and other attendees. My name is Bill Lohman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the integrated service model. I've been listening in, and I have to say it's been a very interesting and actually delightful to hear the conversation taking place about specifically the dementia that I heard mentioned earlier, and the part about meeting the needs of our aging population. It's a big concern in our building, and I know in other buildings who have the majority of our elderly residents, and dementia is a huge issue. With what are tenants supposed to do when they see their neighbors walking around in the hallways half dressed, or when they see them disappearing for days on end and not knowing where they are? These are really serious questions, and they not only have to do with the individual's wellness, but it has to do with the community's well-being as well, because they care about their neighbors. I want to speak to the idea about engagement and the model that we have. This report has a lot of really positive, information in it. And there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into shaping this. And, at the recent regional meeting, it was evident that, the energy and the enthusiasm of many of the volunteers. I heard some comments about, well, what about all those who aren't volunteering? Well, that's a question we've been raising for years. How do we get these folks to want to volunteer and to be a part of a community's well-being? As we all know, it is built through engagement, connection, support, and an idea or a goal. And there is some leadership in there. So I think we've, I'm seeing some really good work being done. I've had some long-standing questions or issues that I've raised over the years about different parts of this entire integrated service model, including the Community Connect Plus. And I brought some of these issues forward, and I'm pleased to say that we've had a couple of conversations, and and it looks like there's some positive actions that are in the works or in the planning. Things like the idea of having a stack member as a co-chair to the committee as one idea. I think some other ideas that could be helpful would be about, to help build trust in the communities, because it is about the concept of engagement and participation. There's been long questions about the actual role of the SSC in the buildings. And this goes back to the second stack meeting. And there are questions today because their role is so spaced out, meaning that they work in numerous buildings. So they're not always present. And I think that's having the SSC in a role where they are in and around tenants in the building and being the energy to build the morale, I think would be very important and very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. Good ideas, good suggestions, and quite timely also, given the discussion we had just prior to this item, which was looking at the kind of services that our residents expect from us. So appreciate your considerations, and we'll take those into consideration as we move forward.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to the item proper, which is the item number 10, Integrated Service Model Annual Report. Tom, I'll invite you to perhaps make some comments, and then you can invite the rest of the team to provide the committee with an update. You're on mute, Tom. First time on video conferencing, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you. I gotta check that gray matter.
Talking about dementia. Sorry.
I know. So I said my gray matter through the chair to the committee, and I am going to provide just some high contextual statements, and then I'm going to pass it over to Deanna for some further insight and just a bit of further context to the integrated service model. This report that we are bringing forward, that was probably about a year and a half ago, that the executive director of the Housing Secretariat, in a discussion, was just conveying to me that we as a corporation, we are reporting through indicators to our board on a regular basis, a quarterly, kind of annual basis through our dashboard. We then report to the city formally through our finances, and also with the Housing Secretariat through these indicators, which we report on with vacancy, arrears. And the one area that they, in talking to the Housing Secretary, felt it would really kind of complete that reporting to the city was a annual reporting on the integrated service model. And so what you have before you today is this is the report, information kind of report on the kind of the progress of the integrated service model to the city. It would be our intention to do this on an annual basis. There is more kind of context in this particular report to kind of frame it for for its submission to the senior services and long-term care at the city. But I do think that we wanted the opportunity to share this with the board, and I'm going to now hand it over to Deanna to provide some further information.
Thanks, Tom. So through the chair to the committee, if we just want to move to the next slide, I'll just add a little bit of context in addition to Tom's comments. So, just previous slide. Maybe I'm a little delayed on my end. But as Tom was discussing, the focus of this report is to provide an update to senior services and long-term care, that division, about the progress against the integrated service model. You will notice as you've read the report that this document, and I will talk about how it's organized in a moment, is really meant to share wherever possible, a trend, a sense of multi-year progress to the city about how we've moved forward with implementation of the goals and objectives of the ISM. So there are many references, as you likely saw, to reports and data points and board reporting schedules that you are all aware of on this committee, because we report to you in year, as Tom described, on many of these metrics. This was really about providing senior services and long-term care with a comprehensive understanding tied to the integrated service. I just want to go to the we used a progress statement approach, and I will note, I didn't say it on the previous slide, we worked closely with senior services and long-term care, so the SSLTC division, including a number of folks. Andrea is on the line. Thank you for your help and support as we've worked on this report. And I mentioned that because how the report is organized is partly a manifestation of that work with the city to make sure we're able to convey the information in a narrative that makes sense both to a informed reader, like a SSLTC staff member or a board member or someone who knows the TSHC story, but also consider, are there ways we can accommodate someone who's new to Toronto seniors housing? And this is the first report they come upon when they Google us or do some research on our organization. So it was really collaborative to get to this sort of approach to the information. So for each of the progress statements, we talk about 3 key pieces. We talk about what's been achieved, so articulating the areas of key progress that we at TSHC feel we have made against the objectives and the goals of the integrated service model, how we achieved those progress areas and how we've moved the needle. As this committee knows, there's been lots of work over the last number of years to think intentionally about how we use our resources, how we establish our processes and procedures to allow us to get at the objectives of the ISM. So we wanted to be clear in this report about the how, not just what areas we've progressed, but how we were able to spend the last 3 years on that journey, 4 years as of today, I guess, on that journey. And of course, we included sections on challenges faced along the way. So again, as this committee is well aware, there have been bumps in the road, many that are common for an organization starting from the ground up with a very unique mandate. So we use this section to be transparent with the City of Toronto and senior services about areas where we've encountered challenge, if we've been able to overcome that, how, and areas where there are still challenges we face and need to navigate as we continue to progress against the ISM. So we wanted to give that fulsome picture of where we've succeeded and where we continue to work to overcome any challenges or barriers along the way. There's an executive summary. It's designed to stand alone. So if that's the only thing someone read, they could take that away and have a good understanding of what the report contains. Another great piece of advice from the City of Toronto on writing this. And numerous appendices. So we didn't want to not provide the data. We wanted to provide the data that tells the quantitative and in some cases qualitative story behind each of the progress statements. But in order to make it efficient for a reader, those are treated as a reference point. A reader will know to go to those appendices if they want more information, but we avoid overwhelming with trends and data and information and are able to convey progress overall. So the overall takeaways, and I'll probably pause here in case there are any comments, for questions and comments. There are slides where we go statement by statement, and I can do that if the committee would like. So what should the reader take away? The ISM is now embedded in how TSHC operates. So the report does convey that we've had strong outcomes across key areas like housing stability, access to service, and tenant engagement. That reflects the approach that we've aimed to take in terms of coordinated service delivery. And like I said, those intentional decisions we've made along the way about resourcing and processes and practices. What has changed for seniors so far? We hope that the reader understands that seniors living at TSHC are experiencing stable housing, more access to community health and wellness supports, and more opportunities to shape services and community life, all on that journey to support aging in place. And then what comes next? We hope that the reader understands that sustaining these outcomes will require continued attention to system level pressures, which are sort of articulated in those challenge areas. There's service fragmentation, we have data limitations, complexity is increasing, things that we have spoken to committee about as we've been on this journey to implement the ISM. And there's work for us as TSHC to work with other levels of government, work with the city, other partners to continue implementing the integrated service model. So while there is progress we want to speak to here and outcomes we want to highlight, the journey continues, I think is definitely a takeaway we want the reader to understand and have a sense of where we are focusing to help continue to move us forward. So in terms of next steps, as Tom articulated, this will be submitted to the general manager and the deputy city manager in senior services and long-term care, and we will work with them in their efforts to socialize the report in whatever way that looks and feels. We are here to support that, that effort on their end. So I'm going to pause here. Any questions? And I'm happy to answer those.
I just have one question before I invite other members, and I think that sort of speaks to what comes next. I mean, I think I understand the pressures, and I understand that this is not the be-all and end-all, but I think it sounds a bit defeatist, and these are my words. So it might be better if we can add something in there to say, you know, staff will do whatever we can to try and mitigate and address some of these pressures as they on an ongoing basis. I just feel that this is a statement where we're sort of looking at an exit strategy. That I mean, I know that's not the intent, but I don't want that to be interpreted as the intent. So we may want to think about how we position that to sort of provide at least some consideration there that, you know, we'll do whatever we can to try and address some of these ongoing challenges and pressure to sustain the outcomes. Brenda, I know you've got to leave. Do you have any comment or consideration before you go? And I'm
No, thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
the report and any specific things I can follow up on, but
Okay.
I'm okay. Thank you very much.
All right, and thanks for your engagement. Appreciate you being here. And
Thank you. Sorry,
okay,
I have to
thanks.
leave. Got another meeting.
All right. Any other comments, considerations for Deanna and her team? Andrea.
Oh, I just wanted to convey our sincere appreciation for all of the collaboration, Tom and Deanna specifically. We have been working so closely with the two of you on this report and just delighted to see it and it's coming together. And it's a really strong report reflecting a lot of your achievements, but also it's great to see you being open and honest about challenges and what we can do. And you know, our hope is that the city and Toronto Seniors Housing gets closer and closer. The whole purpose of creating a standalone Toronto Seniors Corporation is so that seniors have a better quality of life and have more access to more services than they did when they were part of Toronto Community Housing. And, you know, we have a role to play in that. So are we doing everything that we need to do as a city to bring our services to bear and wrap our services around and make sure that everything that we make available to Toronto seniors, we are especially making available to seniors living in Toronto seniors housing. Programs like the Homemakers and Nurses Services program or the supportive housing program that offers a PSW on site, things like that. Like we need to be doing more as well. So I just really wanted to praise Tom and Deanna for their collaborative spirits and for a great report.
All right, thanks. And Andrea, I will continue to lean on you and your colleagues for that collaboration and collegiality. I love that collaboration. You know, that is one thing that I feel very strongly about, and I'm very, very pleased to see that Tom and you and your colleagues and Deanna are sort of living that that perspective. I just have one kind of operational issue that I want to consider. I was wondering, Tom, if there is any consequence of deferring the innovation and research update. I know a number of folks have indicated that they have to leave shortly, and rather than losing quorum, unless you feel that it's imperative, we can go ahead. But
Yeah.
is
Yes.
it?
Yeah, through to the chair. So I I just looked at the QTech agenda, and in fact, there is one in August, and we
Okay.
can defer the innovation and
Okay.
research report to August because I just want to make sure that like this information is there to help inform the board as we move forward on the strategic directions. So it was we did the partnership report kind of last month. This is just builds and integrates more of
Okay.
that work. So yeah, deferring to August will be fine. Thank you.
And the annual report is fine as well for us to deal with it at a subsequent meeting in August.
Which one? Sorry, Freed.
There's an annual report progress that is also on the
Oh,
agenda.
that's sorry. That's Grant. Yes.
Okay,
Can we
Grant,
defer
is it
that?
okay?
Yeah, if through the chair, if you're comfortable with that going directly to the board in July,
Yeah.
we can speak to it there.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that as an update. All right, so let's so we agree we will defer the last two items. The update on the Q1 progress report will go directly to the board, and the other consideration on innovation and research will be addressed at the next QT meeting. Thanks, staff. Thanks for your indulgence. Any other comments on these integrated service delivery? Just to see your hand is up. Is that a
Yes.
legacy hand or a real hand?
No, it's up there.
All right, go ahead.
To the chair and the board, it appears to me that the two separate areas of the integrated service model, one is the health and welfare of the tenants, and the other is the active participation through programming. With regard to health and wellness, I realize that there are limitations as to how TSHC can operate and needs the active healthcare providers or coordinators. And I'm suggesting, and perhaps Andrea, you might be able to do some advocacy work in this area. Long-term care should include at home, not just long-term care in institutions. And because it's been proven time and again that people who live at home have better outcomes than people who are put into long-term care homes. This, of course, would require an integrated service model that addresses issues such as a dementia-capable city, and as well as having amalgamated services for things like having a specific group of PSW providers working specifically to buildings so that the PSWs are not having to travel from place to place at their own time in their own car and their own gas in order to provide the service that they are capable of and perhaps become more efficient in doing that work. With regards to programming, I note that many of the programs that are mentioned are short-term projects. So the question to Deanna is, how many of these are becoming embedded? I realize it's been a short period of time since they were initiated, but I see the value to them, both of them to tenants, and how to bring these forward so that it is equitably distributed amongst all the buildings, not just a specific small group of buildings who are pilot projects or because they have a service provider that's available in that particular area. And I realize this is an awful lot of work because we have 15,000 people to provide services. I recently introduced the Toronto Public Library to our region. And I believe there's been some ongoing discussion in that area, which is very productive, and hopefully will bear some results in the near future. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any response from staff on this one before we move on?
Yep. Yeah, I can provide through the chair to the committee. Jess, I think you're referencing some of the programs in the ISM report with Parks and Recreation and Toronto Public Health. So you're right, those were pilots. Those were an opportunity for the city and TSHC to test out some new programming. And we are working with both of those divisions now to figure out how we continue to roll it out and expand. So yes, there is intention to embed as many of these as possible. You're seeing in 2025, we were able to test these brand new programs on top of the existing calendar for both of those divisions. So noted.
Okay, thanks, Deanna. All right. Okay, so I also, as a matter of process, realized that we were also deferring the seniors acknowledgement discussion to the next meeting, the next QTE meeting, since I think we will be losing quorum shortly. Are there any other considerations on this particular item before we adjourn?
As a sponsor of the manifesto for seniors, and having had Bill represented here and others, I would suggest that it being brought forward at the total board meeting to keep it within the June calendar of the seniors month. To postpone it to July might be inappropriate. And actually, frankly, I would like to see it released to the general public during seniors month.
Yeah, I don't have any fundamental objections to that. The only consideration I would table here is that I think the board would also need some advice from the city in terms of its own operations and how this consideration would fit vis-a-vis some of the things that the city might be doing. Because, you know, while I appreciate the good intent and I think it makes sense, I also want to make sure that we get some advice from city staff as well before so the board is making an informed choice about what we do with this when it comes to the board. So Tom, I will leave it to you to sort of facilitate that dialogue, because I want the board to be fully informed in terms of making a decision on this. If we are going to go public, I don't have any concerns. I just want to make sure that the board is making a decision based on all the available information that we can get access to.
Yes, so yeah, through the church, to the chair, to the committee, we can look at the board meeting is in July, but without we're going to work with Jess and that group for a board report for July.
Okay, are you okay with that, Jess?
It is what it is.
All right. Okay, so with that in mind, once again, I want to thank all of you. Great discussion, good meeting. Apologies for starting a bit late, and also you know, leaving a couple of three items off the agenda. But I want to thank staff again for the work. These committee meetings and board meetings require a lot of work from staff. So I certainly appreciate the work that you folks have done behind the scenes. I want to also thank Bill, Mr. Lohman, and Mr. Margulies for their deputation, and would encourage others to, as best as they can, to provide us with their comment and feedback on an ongoing basis. So thank you very much. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks, Jess. Moved by Jess, seconded by Jim. All in favor? All right, so we stand adjourned. Once again, thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of the week. Weather looks like it's turning, and it's going to be great. So get out there, turn your video off, and have your meetings outdoors.
All right, have a good evening. Thanks for staying in. Great. Thanks for staying in.
Bye, folks.